Hello and welcome to News Central TV. I'm Dashen, Usman. The top stories this hour. President Tinubu approves 3-year extension for Inspector General of Police. Crisis brews between PDP's Governors Forum and FCT Minister Nyesom Wike as party's National Working Committee meets on Wednesday. China, South Africa signed bilateral trade cooperation. Details shortly. Let's begin by telling you that President Bola Tinubu has approved a 3-year tenure extension for Inspector General of Police Kayode Egbetokun. This comes despite Egbetokun's impending retirement age of 60, which he will soon reach tomorrow. Now, the extension was confirmed by sources at the office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation. The move follows the Senate's passage of a bill amending the Police Act 2020, allowing police officers to serve for 40 years or until they're 65. Egbetokun, appointed IGP in June 2023, would have been due for retirement tomorrow. The tenure extension was confirmed in a letter presented to Egbetokun by Secretary to the Government of the Federation, George Akume. Away from that, the National Cybercrime Center of the Nigerian Police Force has taken Isaac Bristol, alleged to be PDP, from his cell for court arraignment. PDP, an anonymous whistleblower on X.com with the handle 99% oppressed, who tweets as #PDPNigeria, was arrested on August 5, 2024 in his hotel room in Rivers State. Justice Emeka Nwite is presiding over the case. By 8:02 a.m. local time on Tuesday, Bristol was preparing to join officers from the Force Criminal Investigation and Intelligence Department, the FCID, for his court appearance in Abuja. According to a court file seen by journalists, PDP faces 9 charges, including mobilizing support to pressure the government through protests, making false money laundering allegations against President Bola Tinubu, and illegally handling classified documents. He is also accused of money laundering and tampering with evidence by destroying his phone. An attempt by suspected gunmen to kidnap Christy Uroye, wife of Delta State lawmaker representing Warri South Constituency 1 in Delta State House of Assembly, Augustine Uroye, has been foiled. The abductors unfortunately killed her security personnel and the driver of the SUV conveying her during the incident, which occurred on Monday, September 2, 2024, around 6:30 p.m. at Jakpa Road in Uvie local government area. However, their getaway was disrupted when their vehicle crashed in a bid to escape the busy road, allowing Uroye to be rescued. The victim, according to sources, is currently receiving treatment at a nearby private hospital. Police Public Relations Officer for Delta State Command, Bright Edafe, who confirmed this in a text message, said it was not a kidnap as the operation was not successful. He said that 3 AK-47 rifles were recovered from the vehicle. A crisis is brewing between the People's Democratic Party Governors Forum and Nyesom Wike, the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, as the party's National Working Committee meets on Wednesday. The conflict between Wike and Governor Siminalayi Fubara has caused a split in the Rivers State House of Assembly and led to legal disputes. Despite mediation efforts by President Bola Tinubu and others, the feud persists. Wike has threatened to take action in PDP-controlled states, prompting a meeting of the governors to address the issue. The NWC meeting on Wednesday will likely address the situation, but the outcome is uncertain. To further discuss this, I'm joined by Diron Odeyemi, former Deputy National Publicity Secretary, PDP. Good afternoon, Diron. Thank you for joining us at this time.
Good afternoon. I'm happy to join you this afternoon.
Now, as a former spokesperson for the PDP, can you share your insights on the ongoing conflict between Nyesom Wike and Governor Sim Fubara in Rivers State? What do you think is the root cause of this crisis?
It's very difficult to blame anybody at this particular time because over time, there has been a lot of accusation and counter-accusation, by the two of them. But the point is, nobody could say actually what has been the problem. But typical of a Nigerian politician, when you put somebody in the position of authority, especially when he install his successor, it's just natural and human to feel that you can control him, being in office. And there is always that attempt, for the governor to say, yes, I have a mind of my own. I can resist any dictation from my former boss. So that often brings a kind of a conflict. But that does not mean that it cannot be resolved. For the two of them to have allowed it to escalate to this extent is what you can blame on perhaps external factors and internal factors. Internal factors in the sense that the people who expected to be nominated by Wike joined Fubara, who was nominated to fight Wike. And Wike as an individual who is living a structure, we don't want the structure to be destroyed. And that is not having a home to return to, even though he's a minister in Abuja. So there is that conflict of power.
Okay. Now, the PDP Governors Forum has expressed support for Governor Fubara, while Wike has threatened to take action in PDP-controlled states. How do you think this situation will play out?
My belief is that the governor should have played a neutral role in mediating between the two of them, rather than taking sides. And they have allowed this matter to escalate to this extent. They have allowed it to degenerate into a crisis situation before coming into it. I don't expect them to take side with the governor because Fubara is part of them. I expect them to pacify, persuade, and mediate between the two, not that they will take side. That will not solve any problem because Wike will not take it easy with the governors. Wike will not take it easy with anybody who wants to frustrate him out of the party. So that is the issue. I believe mediation and true reconciliation is the best way out, not the governors taking side because Fubara is one of them.
All right, so if you say the governors shouldn't take sides, as someone who has served in the PDP's national leadership, what about the role of the National Working Committee in resolving this crisis? Should they intervene? If you agree that they should, then how should they do that?
It is very difficult for National Working Committee to come into this matter. Just like I've said it previously, that it's only the governors that can resolve this matter. The NWC are involved. They have divided themselves between Wike and Atiku, who are the main issue in PDP as of today. So there is no way a factor or a faction who is supporting a candidate or one of the leaders can resolve the issue. It would have been easier if the NWC had been neutral from the onset. But in this case, they are not neutral. They are on one side, and they divided themselves among these two leadership. So it's very difficult for them to win it. It is only the governors that can resolve it. And this is my belief. That they are coming in now is a good omen that, yes, there will be solution. But the solution should not be either fighting Wike. It should be reconciling both Fubara and Wike.
Okay. Now, so what message do you think that, this whole crisis in the PDP sends about to Nigerians about the state of the party? How do you think the party can rebuild trust and unity amongst its members, especially in the run-up to the next elections?
We have allowed it to degenerate to this level. What I expected the party to have done after losing the election is to take an overall review of why and how we lost the presidential. The outcome of that review should have guided us into having a peaceful resolution and plan towards the next election. But we are still in this crisis. Now that the governors have taken over, I think it's an attempt that between now and let's give it in the next 6 months, we'll be able to resolve the crisis and be able to come together and play our role as an opposition political party in Nigeria.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Diron, for speaking to us on this.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now to the petroleum sector. President of the Dangote Group, Aliko Dangote, has presented the first sample of premium motor spirit produced at his refinery in Ibeju-Lekki, Lagos. Speaking during a broadcast on Tuesday, Dangote announced that the 650,000 barrel capacity refinery had successfully conducted a test run of the product. He praised Nigerians and President Bola Tinubu for supporting growth and development, especially the Naira for crude policy, which he said would help stabilize the currency. Dangote emphasized that the refinery would enable Nigeria to accurately track fuel consumption by monitoring every truck and ship. He also stated that the refinery would meet the fuel demands of Nigeria and the wider sub-Saharan Africa region.
I want to personally also thank Mr. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, for creating this idea of Naira for crude and also Naira for the product. Doing that, it will give a lot of stability for the Naira, where now you remove 40% of the demand of dollars in the market, and that will actually stabilize the market. But that's not it. As you know, there's quite a lot of what you call round tripping, where people now do documentation and the fuel does not come into Nigeria, and this is a fact. So right now, as we have this refinery working, it will show the true consumption of Nigeria. We can track every single loaded trucks, and we will try as much as possible to track the loaded ships. Trucks, we can tell you where they are. Just like now in some of the products that we do, we can tell you exactly the consumption pattern and co. But that is a discussion for another day. Today's discussion is just to celebrate and to thank God Almighty for bringing us to this stage of now producing gasoline. And I know that a lot of people have not actually believed that we'll be able to deliver.
Meanwhile, the Nigerian government has dismissed reports suggesting that the Ministry of Petroleum has directed the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited to sell fuel at 1,000 naira, far above the approved pump price. The false report claimed that Minister of State for Oil and Gas, Heineken Lokpobiri, gave the directive. In a statement on Tuesday, Lokpobiri's aide, Nemeka Okafor, condemned the report as fabricated and aimed at causing confusion in the oil sector. Okafor clarified that the government has never interfered with petroleum pricing or directed a price increase. She called the claims baseless and malicious and challenged anyone with evidence to come forward. Okafor emphasized that NNPCL operates independently, governed by its board of directors under the Companies and Allied Matters Act, CAMA. To the lingering fuel scarcity, frustration is the word with which very many Nigerians will describe their daily lives, and this is more so for motorists. This is owing to the scarcity of petrol in the country, as it has become very difficult to find for purchase, and even when they do, it is at very exorbitant price. News Central's Chizoba Nyongwe in Jos, the Plateau State capital, was on the major streets of the city to monitor the fuel situation and filed this report.
It is no longer news that premium motor spirit has become very scarce in many parts of Nigeria, with Plateau State not an exception. For the past 10 weeks in Plateau State, petrol has been very scarce, with motorists finding it difficult to find filling stations to buy from, except for black markets, who sell at very exorbitant prices, ranging from 930 naira per litre to 1,000 naira per litre. Only the NNPC mega stations sell at the official pump price of 617 naira per litre, giving rise to these very long queues that stretch up to 5 kilometers away. And in the long run, many motorists end up not buying the product.
I can say it has become a kind of a routine pattern that we have to park, we have to come and queue here now against tomorrow. So we have to leave the car here and wait till tomorrow before we can get fuel from this from the mega filling station.
I think the least the government can provide for Nigerians, being one of the major oil producing countries, is fuel. We are not saying that it should be given to us free. At least let the price of fuel be commensurate with our status as an oil producing country.
For so many, the scarcity of petrol is more worrisome because Nigeria is also a major producer of crude oil, yet citizens go through different levels of difficulties to find petrol to purchase. This has caused untold hardship among citizens as the scarcity has equally affected every other means of livelihood.
We elected you to serve us. We elected you to give us good government for goodness sake. Why are we tortured to this extent? Why is the government subjected us to this level of penury? This is ungodly. This is unpardonable.
If I didn't get this fuel now, I will not be able to work. So you can see it's stressful and it's not making things easy.
As this situation continues to soar, motorists are calling on government to do anything possible to ensure that they go back to their normal lives again with this situation coming under control. In Jos for News Central, Chizoba and Nyowe.
We go on a break now. When we return, we'll tell you how northern governors are strategizing to tackle flooding insecurity. Stay with us. Welcome back. The Kebbi State Governor, Comrade Dr. Nasser Idris Kaurangwandu, has sworn in the newly elected 21 local government chairmen in Kebbi State. The new chairman, vice chairman, and their councillors were elected into their respective offices during the local government elections held on August 31 across Kebbi State. Speaking shortly after the swearing-in ceremony at the Presidential Lodge in Birnin Kebbi on Monday, Governor Idris charged them to be transparent to their people at the grassroots level. He urged them to operate an open-door policy in the discharge of their constitutional responsibilities. Now to a business-related story. Investors in Nigeria's first foreign currency-denominated domestic bond will receive their allotments on Friday. The $500 million bond, launched by the federal government, closed on August 30 and will be formally issued on September 6, the settlement date when the bond's 5-year tenure and 9.75% annual interest rate will start. The Series 1 US dollar bond, which opened on August 19, will be listed on the Nigerian Exchange and FMDQ Securities Exchange. The Debt Management Office says interest will accrue from the settlement date and the bonds will be credited to investors' Central Securities Clearance System accounts. The DMO and issuing houses are currently finalizing returns from receiving agents. Data protection experts have called for increased collaborative efforts to safeguard the personal information of data subjects in Africa. This comes as the Somalia Data Protection Authority embarked on a study tour of Nigeria's data protection ecosystem and the impact of its unique models. News Central's Joshua Marai has the details of this report.
Senior officials of the Somalia Data Protection Authority with their counterparts from Nigeria. The team say they are embarking on a one-week study tour to the Nigeria Data Protection Commission aimed at exchanging valuable insight, sharing best practices, and strengthening Africa's data protection ecosystem. The ambassador of Somalia to Nigeria expressed gratitude to the Commissioner of the Nigerian Data Protection Commission for the opportunity, saying it will foster collaboration and knowledge sharing between the two nations.
First of all, I would like to thank Nigerian Data Protection Commission who gave our team this opportunity. It is a pleasure to me to welcome also the Somali team in Nigeria. In Nigeria, I have been here for 3 years now, so everything Somali needs is available in Nigeria, in terms of knowledge, in terms of experience. So I would like you to take this message to Somalia.
The commissioner of the Nigerian Data Protection Commission says that African nations must build their capacity in ensuring adequate protection of data of citizens, which has become a fundamental right.
And a major problem you may face is the issue of awareness. It's common with all DPAs across the globe that people don't really know about data privacy. It's just normal. And that is why we need to channel a lot of energy towards to ensure that we create awareness, let people understand what data privacy is all about. And we cannot continue to rely on foreign technologies to drive our processes in Africa. Well, we have the people, we have the knowledge, we have the talents. What we need to do is to harness these talents, ensure that we put them together to address specific problems and provide solutions in implementing data protection laws in Africa.
The commissioner says that the study tour is the first official global visit to the Nigerian Data Protection Commission by a data protection agency from a sister African nation. He says that this will facilitate future cooperation between the two countries in data protection. In Abuja for News Central, I am Joshua Imarai.
Coming up, China-South Africa signed bilateral trade cooperation. We'll bring you details after the break. Let's head to Central Africa, where 5 civilians and 5 soldiers of the Democratic Republic of Congo's army were killed in an attack on a bar in a troubled northeastern region. Military and local sources said weapons-wielding assailants had burst into the bar in the town of Nizi, 20 kilometers north of the regional capital Bunia, late on Sunday. Long plagued by violence, Ituri province is the scene of a conflict between rival ethnic militias, which has led to the deaths of thousands of civilians and massive population displacements. Intercommunal violence killed thousands in gold-rich Ituri from 1999 to 2003 until an intervention by European forces restored calm. The conflict erupted again in 2017, resulting in thousands more deaths and the mass displacement of residents. Up north, Abdelmajid Tebboune, who assumed Algeria's presidency during mass pro-democracy protests, is touting his achievements as he seeks another term. However, 5 years after the Hirak movement faded, some say real change remains elusive. The Hirak protests, which led to the ousting of longtime autocratic President Abdelaziz Bouteflika in 2019, aimed for a comprehensive political overhaul. Tebboune, a minister under Bouteflika, took over as president in December that year after widely boycotted elections as the movement was stifled and its leaders were imprisoned. Now, as he campaigns for the September 7 election, he says he has succeeded in rectifying the country's past wrongs with broad achievements and is promising more if re-elected. We now head to the east, where farmers in northern Sudan's village of Messawi are resorting to solar energy to cut costs amid water and electricity shortages. After more than a year of war between the country's national army and the paramilitary rapid support forces, farmers are facing an ever-growing number of challenges.
المشكلة الأساسية إنه قطع الغيار والإزبيرات بتاعت الألواح بقت ذاتها ما متوفرة للشركة عشان توفر لك شنو قطع الغيار والإزبيرات، ودي مشكلة كبيرة جدا في استيراد الألواح الطاقة الشمسية والإنفرترات والمحولات. فكمية الأرض المزروعة كانت في 2020 400 فدان، من 1400 تغلصت ل 400 فدان. والمشروع طبعا صراحة أثر تأثير كبير جدا بقيام الحرب، لأنه مدخلات الإنتاج بقت اتضاعفت الأسعار حقتها. نحن عندنا شوال السماد من 18,000 ل 54,000 بعد الحرب مباشرة.
South Africa and China have entered all-round strategic cooperative partnership in a new era, cementing 25 years of strong bonds of friendship and cooperation the two countries enjoy since establishing formal diplomatic relations. As part of the state visit, President Xi Jinping and President Cyril Ramaphosa jointly witnessed the signing of several bilateral cooperation instruments in the following areas: cooperation of the application of Beidou navigation satellite system, sustaining housing and human settlements development, deepening bilateral trade cooperation, cultural heritage, among others. The two sides reaffirmed that they cherish the special and ever-growing friendship between the two countries and recommitted to working together towards building a high-quality China-South Africa community with a shared future. To discuss this development, we're joined by Sanusha Naidu, foreign policy analyst. Hello, Sanusha. Thank you so much for joining us at this time.
Good afternoon, and thanks for having me.
So can you provide a brief overview of the historical context of China-South Africa relations? How have they evolved over the years?
Well, South Africa and China have actually deepened the relationship after 94. You know that in many ways, South Africa's relationship pre-94 was with Taiwan. And then following that, South Africa chose to recognize Beijing as in terms of the One China policy. And it has actually been one of a strategic partnership, both politically, economically, as well as in terms of the socioeconomic and the cultural soft power dynamics. Now, South Africa does have a Chinese community that came in the 1800s that basically are a diaspora. And then, of course, you had more Chinese move into South Africa in terms of economic opportunities, entrepreneurship after the 1990s. Similarly, South Africa's companies like Naspers, which then opened up Tencent in China, and then of course other kinds of economic engagements took place. And so you do have that kind of economic relationship that exists between Beijing and Pretoria. So I think what you're seeing now is a deepening of those ties and more in terms of upgrading the relationship from the comprehensive strategic partnership to a much more all-inclusive partnership. And I think this is why this visit is very symbolic and significant in a sense, because it shows that South Africa and China share the kind of cooperation that will actually be beneficial in the context of South Africa's economic reconstruction and recovery program, but also aligning more synergetically to China's Belt and Road Initiative, which was part of the discussions between President Xi Jinping and Ramaphosa, but also in helping the Government of National Unity find traction in terms of the socioeconomic issues that they need to address in terms of the development agenda.
Yes, indeed, Sanusha. Now, but how are these agreements, expected to impact the economies of both China and South Africa? Are there any particular industries that stand to benefit the most?
Well, I think it's all encompassing, but I think one of the key areas that would be for the South African context is really around how does it stimulate manufacturing, industrialization, and of course bring about the economic development in terms of employment opportunities. I mean, that is something that has been reiterated throughout the discussions in the bilateral discussions and deliberations that both the Chinese and the South African presidencies had, and more importantly, the signing of cooperation agreements in the area of human settlements and housing, in terms of looking at sanitary and phytosanitary requirements, in terms of our exports, a trade dynamic as well. And just now we heard from our Minister of Trade and Industry that there's been some discussion and negotiation around 98 products. I don't know the products yet. I still have to have a look at what those products are that will be given some kind of access to the Chinese market based on how they'll be assessed and allowed, whether it's going to be about some kind of zero tariffing or duty-free, market-free access. We'll have to see. But those 98 products could actually be stimulating the economy as well. I think also in terms of South Africa being Today, we just heard that Chinese brands like Haval have been the best-selling cars in the South African market. And that can actually act as also as an economic enabler in terms of our development, industrial corridors, industrial zones like in Kruger out in the Eastern Cape, where the Chinese are also looking at that in a critical way in terms of how they may look at production. And then, of course, there's also renewable energy. Our electricity minister, Minister Ramakgopa, is also in the delegation visiting China. And one of the key things is around procurement and power. I mean, it's around power transmission and procurement. And that's key in terms of renewable energy. And we know that the Chinese have been very key about how renewable energy is going to be critical as well to the kind of understanding in terms of assisting African countries with their energy grids and so forth. So, that's going to be important. And then, of course, the question around green technology and transfers.
Yeah. Sanusha, these agreements, how are they significant for South Africa? I mean, in the context of its foreign policy, you did say that, there's been a long-standing relationship between China and South Africa, and Ramaphosa is actually, in China at the moment as well. But how do they align with South Africa's broader goals on the continent and also internationally?
Well, our foreign policy is, it's anchored in the idea of what the National Development Plan is. And if you look at the Government of National Unity, and you look at some of the alignment of the National Development Plan, linking to Agenda 2030, linking to Agenda 2063, the Africa we want, those are kind of those anchors and those kinds of dynamics that kind of filter into our foreign policy. So the kind of better Africa we want, the better South Africa we want, and a better world that we want is also linking back to the fact that both sides have also agreed to reinforce and recommit to the global governance reform agenda, the question of recognizing that Africa is pivotal to the whole kind of value chain around critical minerals, but also understanding that there has to be that kind of national interest that comes into play when you look at, for example, the trade deficit that South Africa and China have, that South Africa has with China, and that one is one of the core issues that also has to be addressed. And so too is the trade deficit that African countries may do have with China in terms of the broader trade dynamic within the continent. So I think understanding that integration of where Africa is and understanding how it may actually be very pivotal and have utility for the South African foreign policy is kind of that space where you kind of find that beneficial output. Of course, there's going to be a lot of important dynamics that need to come into play. It's important that, that from the South African side, that they have a key, clear and coherent strategic work frame around this engagement. And similarly, in terms of the fact that South Africa and China are both members of the BRICS. And of course, they're going to be meeting again very soon at the summit in Russia in October. And more importantly, I think that what it does do is that it kind of articulates that South African foreign policy is not just grounded about just about what its own interests are, but it kind of ventilates around the global governance agenda. And of course, Minister Lamola is there as well as the Minister of DIRCO, and International Relations. And of course, that articulation of the support in terms of South-South cooperation, in terms of the agency and voice of the Global South is also important in the articulation of South African foreign policy. Yes, indeed.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Sanusha, for taking time out to speak to us on this.
Thank you.
Now, in other news from around the world, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he will not surrender to pressure amid growing calls for him to agree to a deal to end the conflict in Gaza. The Israeli Prime Minister spoke against the backdrop of the largest protests his government has seen since the outbreak of the war in Gaza on 7 October, as anger over the failure to get hostages home safely intensifies. Netanyahu also vowed that Israel will not give up control of the Philadelphia corridor in Gaza, a narrow piece of land in southern Gaza which leads to its border with Egypt, which he described as Hamas's lifeline. At least more than 1 million people More than millions of people are estimated to have taken to the streets of Israel on Sunday to express anger at his government's failure to secure a ceasefire deal after the 6 hostages were found dead in an underground tunnel in Gaza on Saturday. To unpack this, we're joined by a journalist, Roland Marks. Hello, Roland. Thank you for joining us. All right, so if you can hear me, how would you describe the overall mood among the citizens following the recent protests for ceasefire? What sentiments are most prevalent?
Well, first of all, there is a deep sense of grief and mourning in Israel. Just to remind your viewers that the 6 hostages whose bodies were recovered by our IDF troops on Sunday were not found dead. They were executed, according to the forensic pathologists, by Hamas about 48 hours before our IDF troops were able to locate them, and very, very close to where a Bedouin Israeli was rescued by the IDF last week. It is absolutely shattering to Israeli society that these 6 hostages, Hirsch, Ori, Alex, Almog, Carmel, and Eden, were murdered in so brutal a manner by Hamas, a terrorist organization. And we know from information that has been released that at least 3 of them were on the list of hostages to be released in this first phase of a 45-day ceasefire. So I think also what seems to be communicated around the world is not the entire full picture. Yes, Israelis are mourning. We are in a deep sense of grief and fury that this has happened. But the anger is also not solely leveled at Prime Minister Netanyahu. There is also a lot of anger at the international community, who for months said, do not go into Rafah, do not go into Rafah. And these hostages were found murdered in Rafah, very, very deep inside a tunnel. Now, the ceasefire that is being discussed is not a ceasefire to end the war. I think we need to be very clear about that. It is a 45-day ceasefire, which would see the first phase of remaining hostages released. And what Hamas is demanding in return is that Israel vacate not just the entire strip. Our troops are still in the Gaza Strip, which no country, I think, would agree to, but that we vacate the Philadelphia corridor. Now, that little stretch of land that is between southern Gaza and Egypt is extremely critical, because at least 150 tunnels have been found there, and this provides the opportunity for Hamas to receive weapons and money and whatever goods smuggled in from Egypt's side of the border. Now, it also must be noted that Hamas routinely turn down these ceasefire agreements, and where we are seeing some disparity in Israel is that the security establishment feel that we are in a position, having committed significant defeats to Hamas, destroyed the majority of their battalions and their capability, that we are able to vacate the Philadelphia corridor.
Okay, Roland.
We can take it off the table for now, and if need be, if Hamas resurges after that, we can go in and take care of the issue.
All
but
right,
the real
Roland.
issue.
But what has been Prime Minister Netanyahu's response, to all of this, especially to the protests, as we can see, both in terms of public statements and also policy actions?
Well, first of all, what you are seeing is Israeli democracy in action. This is Israel, a robust and vibrant democracy with the rights of citizens to express themselves. And I think also a lot of it is an expression of grief. And the only place that Israelis can really take our grief out against is the government. But there is a lot of anger towards
the Prime Minister by many who say that the army, the security establishment have told you that we can leave Philadelphia off the table for now and just focus on the hostages. And there is a feeling that he is being inflexible on that. And that is where the anger is coming from. And his response is, the Philadelphia is too critical an area to vacate, and he's not prepared to bow to pressure on that.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Rolene, for joining us on the news and speaking on this. Now in business, the two-pot retirement system for pensioners in South Africa is now officially operational, and administrators are anticipated to face challenges in managing a high volume of withdrawal requests from members. This much-anticipated retirement reform was preceded by thorough planning, including the development and implementation of new systems by administrators to facilitate the transition to the two-pot structure. Under the system, 1/3 of pension fund members' future retirement savings will be designated for a savings component, while 2/3 of their contributions will go towards a retirement component. On Business Edge, Zanele Sabela, COSATU spokesperson, provided clarification on the different elements of the two-pot system. Now in the world of sports, the recent arrivals of Moses Simon, Al-Hassan Yusuf, Benjamin Tanimu and Samuel Chukwueze have increased the total number of players in the Super Eagles camp to 18. This comes as the team gears up for their first training session in Uyo ahead of the AFCON qualifying match against Rwanda. They join earlier rivals Alex Iwobi, Frank Onyeka and Calvin Bassey. 5 more players are expected, including star striker Victor Osimhen, who is anticipated to join soon. Benjamin Tanimu, who has replaced Bright Osai Samuel, who has been sidelined due to injury. With 18 players now in camp, preparations are in full swing as the team aims for a strong performance to boost their chances in the AFCON qualifiers. The squad of 23 will train for their opening match against the Benin Republic on September 7 at the Godswill Akpabio Stadium, followed by a game against Rwanda in Kigali 3 days later. Due to his superb performance in August, Super Eagles and FC Nantes winger Moses Simon has been nominated for the Club Player of the Month. The Yellow Submarine recorded back-to-back victories in the last 2 games played in the month, with Simon playing an active role in the games. He was on target against Stade de Reims and also scored the winning goal against Montpellier last weekend. He was nominated against Nathan Zeze, Mathis Elbline and Alban Lafont. And that's all at this hour. But before we go, let's take another look at some of our top stories. We told you that President Tinubu has approved 3-year extension for Inspector General of Police. We also told you that crisis is brewing between PDP's Governors Forum and FCT Minister Nyesom Wike as party's National Working Committee meets on Wednesday. We also told you that China, South Africa have signed bilateral trade cooperation. Send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen. Do follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I'm Dashen Usman.